Hello and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, I am the host of my podcast, Creating Connections. Basically someone that is always self-improving and most importantly sharing that journey, because I think there's a lot of power in that and not just waiting until I get to the next step. This video is for people that are, my dog is just getting comfortable, that are feeling a little stuck in their late 20s, a quarter life crisis.
I am halfway through my 20s and I am done with this shit. Oh my God, I'm sick of my 20s.
And most importantly, I think what you'll get out of this video is if you're someone that's struggling to balance like a 9-to-5 corporate job and then also trying to still kind of hone in on your creativity, because essentially one day you want it to just be all your creativity is what you're doing, but right now we gotta balance both. So that is where I'm coming from. If you relate, please feel free to watch the rest of this. I'm gonna go over 3 things that I'm doing that are basically helping me get out of this unstuck mindset to quarter life crisis mode. All right, so first things first, these 3 things that I gathered are from just a bunch of videos that I have been watching on YouTube, because I am currently on a social media cleanse from Instagram and TikTok, because I realized that I am more on the consuming side right now than the producing. And as someone that has like a podcast and I'm trying to grow it and I'm trying to just overall create my own brand, I think that I needed to pull back really extreme, because that's the kind of personality I am, by doing a 3-month, 4-month cleanse. And now I'm just watching YouTube videos that have to do with like, how can I better my things? How can I grow my brand? How can I build my podcast? How can I kind of build this confidence up that I think my 9-to-5 corporate job has diminished, because it doesn't really fuel my creativity to a T. Starting off with number 1. One of the things that I came across, of course, is everyone knows about him, but I was just like watching a bunch of videos and people that were being interviewed in podcasts were talking about him. So I was like, all right, let me check out Alex Hormozi once and for all for myself. And one of the videos that I saw that he made that really stuck to me was this idea of investing in yourself, and how basically the more you keep growing in just like expertise within a certain subject or just like learning, then your value continues to grow. And on top of that, the amount that you could charge eventually, like your worth continues to grow, right? Whether it is something that you're doing on the side, like charging for something, or whether it's just like, yeah, in your 9-to-5, like the more your value and your knowledge grows, then of course you're gonna be able to ask for a higher salary. And so this idea of value and this perspective of just thinking about how can I increase my value has really helped me get unstuck with my podcast. Because with my podcast, I started it 3 years ago, and I'm sharing this story so that maybe you can apply it into something into your own personal life. But I started it 3 years ago, and there was a clear like passion for what I wanted to talk about. And I even made YouTube videos like on the fly, and I was just always creating. And I think now, because of just having to go through a 9-to-6 and I've just been there for a little too long, I just feel like I've become more comfortable 100% with the 9-to-6 corporate life. Not to say that I'm any happier, but it's definitely comfort. And so anyways, within my podcast, I've been thinking about it lately because I've been pushing it back a lot, and I 100% know it has to do with my confidence levels and this little voice in my head that keeps saying like, that already exists, what's the point of you kind of creating your own flavor to it? And I just know that the version of me 3 years ago never thought this way. And so I'm like, how can I restructure this mindset, and how can I stop thinking this way? Because at the end of the day, who cares? Like, there are so many different kinds of pens, but that didn't stop the next guy from creating a pen, right? So, or coffee, right? Like, there's so many kinds of coffee shops, but it doesn't create the next guy from stopping or from starting a coffee shop. So this idea about value has really helped me, because I can grab it, I can see it. Like, I know what my current expertise is within podcasting when it comes to the technical stuff, when it comes to my ability to interview, when it comes to the non-technical things, right? The things I could improve on a little bit. It's very obvious to me. And so to me, because I can now see what I currently own and what I have to improve on, it gave me a clear path. Instead of being like, I don't even know where to start, I don't even know what my brand is anymore. Like, instead of just fueling these negative thoughts, I was able to be like, let's just make a clear list of, like, literally write it down, a clear list of where you're at and where you need to be to achieve this next level. And so by focusing on value, that has helped me a lot. And I think too, when it comes to creating content, like I said earlier, you see a bunch of content nowadays, and you always see people that have grown, that are already at their peak. And you see their content and it's everything. It literally includes day in the lives to skincare routines to what I buy my dog to eat. I don't know, but there's so many things going on in their videos. And I think that can overwhelm us and can make us think that, well, I need to include everything in my videos as well. But I think you can work up to that certain point. So you start off, and this is something that I also gathered from a bunch of the YouTube videos I've been consuming lately, but you get to that point. You don't start off at that point. At least it's harder to start off at that point. That's why focusing on value and focusing on, like, okay, focusing on value allows for you to kind of see the black and white, what you can offer, what you don't offer. Okay, cool, I can start working on what I can offer because I still need to learn it. And then you're able to one day get to that level of content creation where you can include snippets of your life and whatever it may be, because you've kind of gained your audience and you've gained momentum, and people could tell you if they like it or not, and you just keep building on that, right? So focusing on value is the first thing. The second one is from this video, and I'm gonna tag them all and put them on the side because I do not remember their names and I did not write them down, so that is my fault. It is concept that has to do with when something is genius. So in this one dialogue between Omar, which is the podcast host, and then I'm forgetting the other person's name right now, but I've been learning a lot from his channel as well. So-and-so brings up that people's ideas. So have you guys ever had an idea and then you get caught in the details of the idea because you're like, well, it would be really genius to do this because this is trendy right now and this makes sense, etc., etc. And so basically these two were having a conversation along those lines of, like, things aren't genius until they're successful.
And people hit me like, yo, that was genius because it's the white. And then they're just focused on the subject. And then somebody said something like, when you walk in, you're breaking a third wall or something like that. I'm like, bro, that was the wall that we had, right? We just do it. Yeah. But I think once you start doing something, the thing that you're doing becomes genius later.
Yep.
Not that it was, like, well thought out. Like, some people be like, yo, Omar, it was genius that you got to space. And you're like, well, I just got to space so I can create content.
Yep.
But now it's like a brilliant strategic move, but activity produces that. So
me deciding to call this cracked up coffee isn't genius until I finally, like, I have so many coffee stands of cracked up coffee and I have so many orders and purchases and I'm just making it, right? Like, until this business is actually successful, that name then becomes genius because it's like, oh my God, cracked up coffee. Like, everyone talks about how caffeine is addicting because it is. And now she, like, plays into that name. Genius idea, right? Yes, but it's not what created everything. And what I mean by that is that I notice when I am coming up with my ideas, I get really stuck on the details because I'm like, this is the genius way to start it. This is the genius way to think about it. And then it stops me in my tracks because I have too many ideas and I'm too focused on the nitpicky details, when I think this is what I took from this conversation in this podcast. And what I'm trying to tell you guys is, at the end of the day, if the concept is coffee, the details in between, the name of it, etc., they matter to a certain extent, 100%. But if those are holding you up, the difference between the two ideas you have, like in the names or whatever it may be, you need to pick one and pursue, and then wait until, and then you'll see, I guess, that your idea was genius, no matter if you took route 1 or route 2, because at the end of the day, it was the product, it was the final thing that made it genius. I hope that makes sense. If not, please go watch this video that I will tag, but it made a lot of sense to me because as someone that gets hung up on the details, I was like, dude, just pick something, especially if, like, the details are just very, like, there's just small differences in how they're executed, but the overall messaging is the same, then just fucking go, and it'll be genius no matter what. So that really also helped me get unstuck. The third thing was this overall, I learned it a while back, and it wasn't a video. I think it was a book. Actually, I believe it was The Body Keeps the Score. I'm forgetting the author's name as well, but I'm going to put it on the side here. It was talking about how human beings are the only species that will judge themselves for something twice. So instead of forgiving yourself, you kind of relive the shame, you relive the judgment, and you're like, oh, can't do it because I'm such a bad person. And the reason why I bring this up is because as someone who started her podcast 3 years ago and has done a bunch of things in between, I feel like in my late 20s, I judge my early 20 life to my late 20 life, and I'm like, wow, I had so much ambition, so much drive back then. I did things with more confidence, which is crazy because I knew back in the time I wasn't that. I really don't think my confidence has changed that much, which is like a key thing, and maybe my future success is completely leveling that up. But I think the biggest thing was that I have compared myself to the beginning stages of my podcast, and I'm like, where is that energy? Like, why haven't I been like that recently? And I think it's because of just judging myself, of my decisions and the experiences I've had in between that I need to just get over, because they're all learning lessons. And I think that's the biggest thing about being in your late 20s, is that you have had a lot of learning lessons. And I think that's the goal, because in your 20s, you hear all the time that you're supposed to be trying a bunch of stuff, because in your 30s is when you're supposed to be like actually setting the pavements or the stones in your routes. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but it made sense to me. But no, so yes, your 20s are supposed to be a bunch of experimenting, but even though we know that, I know that I still judge myself for not keeping the consistency and instead having a path that's a little more like this. And at the end of the day, we hear it all the time, and we have to just remind ourselves that we're human, we're learning, and that's the route and the perspective that you should kind of see your situations by, because then you're able to just keep on moving forward. So anyways, these 3 things are what are helping me move forward in my late 20s lately. With work, with my creativity. I feel like I mainly touched on creativity, but I feel like they apply to both in my experiences. If this is something that was helpful to you, please let me know. Other than that, please like and subscribe if you did find this content to be valuable. And yes, I will 100% tag everything that I've been watching lately. Well, the biggest ones that contributed to these 3 things, because it was really just me taking from these videos and being like, wow, that really applies to my life. I think it's helpful for other people. Let me go ahead and share. So anyways, I hope to see you guys in the next one, and thank you for tuning in. Toodles.